One of the most important questions in swimming is how can you get your turns faster? Over the short course races, so the 25-meter pool, and even the shorter distance races in general, turns can make up a big portion of the race. And so it's really important to make sure that you're nailing these turns and making sure you're getting off the wall nice and fast. Let's quickly calculate how much turns actually represent in terms of race distance through an event like a 100-meter freestyle. Say you streamlined 12.5 meters off the dive and your streamline for the turn is around 7.5 meters, so a little bit past the flags. That would mean a total of 20 meters will be spent under the water, which if we put that over 100 meters of distance, that's 20% of your race under the water. If you're in a short course pool, you add in 2 more turns and say you did 7.5 of both of them. So that's another 15 meters. So 20 plus 15, that's 35 meters. Over 100 meters of freestyle, that's 35% of your race spent under the water. By now, you should start to understand how important it is to nail your turns if you're going to push faster times. So throughout this video, I'll help you understand the different parts of turns and how to improve them. And you can easily apply this to both your flip turns, so in freestyle, and also your touch turns, so butterfly, breaststroke, and transitions in IM. Continuing on, we'll talk about how we can improve our turns by splitting this part of the video into 3 different steps of each part of the turn. In each part, we'll go through a couple of important concepts and we'll back these concepts up with scientific research and experiments so that we really know that the proof is in the pudding. The studies also say the things that I'm saying. First up, we have the entry phase into the wall, which we can also call the setup phase. One of the aims of turning fast is to get into the wall with as much speed or maintaining your race speed into the wall. One way to think about this is with a tennis ball. If I'm throwing the tennis ball at a wall really hard, it's gonna come back just as fast, and I might not be able to catch it because it's gone so fast. But if I kind of toss the tennis ball at the wall with not that much force, it's probably not even going to come back to me because it's just going to drop. So in the same way, the faster you're hitting the wall at a faster speed, the kind of more speed you'll be able to push off the wall with, because you've got that momentum going at the initial entry phase. A study from Ross Venel and colleagues found that wave drag is around 50 to 60% of all the types of passive drag that are acting on you during your swim on the surface of the water. In swimming, there are 3 types of drag that are acting on you, which is in a way slowing you down in the water. The first one is wave drag, which we just talked about. And then there is skin friction drag, so the friction that comes over your skin when you're swimming.
And lastly, there is pressure drag, which is affected by your technique.
Going back to our wave drag, which is the point we're on now, as you're moving through the water on the surface, which is basically all your swimming strokes, you'll be making a wave. And as odd as it seems, that wave costs you energy to make. And so more of your efforts as you swim faster on the surface will be moved towards making the wave instead of pushing you forward. And we also know that when you're setting up for the turn, you'll be on the surface of the water because there's that one little kind of spot in your turn where you finish your stroke and you're kind of gliding into the wall just for that little half a meter distance. And on that half meter distance, when you're on the top of the water, you're not producing any power to move forward and you're just relying on your momentum that you've created in the previous strokes to push you forward. But really, you're being slowed down at that point by wave drag that you're creating on the surface of the water. So what does this mean for improving turns? This basically means the more time you spend gliding into the wall to set up for your turn, the slower you enter the wall. And so going back to the analogy where we were talking about the tennis ball, the faster you throw the tennis ball at the wall, the faster it'll come back. And so if you're gliding into the wall for too long, that means you'll slow down quite a lot because of wave drag that we've explained before. And as a result, you won't really be getting that momentum from a fast turn to get off the wall fast. One point of thinking is that, well, you could dip your head a little bit before you get into the wall so that you're not really creating that wave drag that's coming over your head. And whilst that's a valid point, the same study that we've mentioned before from Ross Vanel found that from 0 meters on the surface to 0.4 meters under, there really isn't that much of a difference in drag coefficient, which means that by dipping your head, you might get a little bit of an advantage compared to the surface, but what will benefit you more is maintaining that speed into the wall and making sure you're not gliding and slowing down in that little, half stroke section before the wall. All right, next up, we'll talk about the stern waves that come towards the wall with you when you get into the turn. When you're swimming, you create 2 types of waves. One of them is called the bow wave, which is the wave that's made by your head when you're pushing through the water, and sometimes your shoulders as well. The second type of wave is called a stern wave, and you can kind of think of it like a snail trail that is left behind when you're swimming through the water. The reason why it's called a stern wave is because it actually originates from boats, where at the front of the boat where the bow is, it creates a big wave at the front, and then at the back of the boat where there's less pressure, the water collapses in and it creates a stern wave as well. So back to swimming, when you approach the wall, you're bringing in a stern wave, and that wave has a lot of power and force. And so if you're trying to turn and head in the other direction and you don't go under the wave, you'll be pushing against it. And of course, if you've been to the beach, which I think everyone has, you will know that if you swim against the wave, you literally you get plowed over because it's just so powerful. And whilst the stern wave that you bring in isn't going to be as powerful as the wave, you still can understand the same kind of physics behind it, where if you're trying to oppose a force that's coming towards you, you won't be able to go as fast against it as opposed to if you were just swimming in clean water. And so if you think about it, the stern wave only goes so deep in the water. So if you're turning and you can get under that wave, you'll be swimming in clean water and you'll be able to put all that streamline energy and speed into pushing your body forward instead of pushing against that stern wave that you've brought in. So as a finishing part to this section, how do you get under your stern wave? Where do you position your feet? Well, when you get into the wall, it's better to have your feet a little bit higher, because if you're higher in the water, you can angle your body downwards. And that way, if you can angle your body downwards, when you push off, you'll be getting under the wave, a little bit deeper under the water, basically. Last but not least, we have our third part, which is the depth of the streamline that will improve your turns. I think that this is one of the most important bits of the video, and if you can make sure to take away this information and implement it, it'll help you a lot. On top of the different ways to improve your entry speed in the first part, and the push-off speed, which is getting under your stern wave, there's actually a bit of interesting research which shows that the different levels of drag at different depths of the water affect your speed at which you can streamline. A study by Rubola and colleagues found that there's a positive relationship between drag and depth by towing a mannequin through a flume, which is like a little rectangular box of water in a testing environment. This basically means, summarized, that the lower in the water you go, the less the drag will affect you. I've summarized the results of the study into a spreadsheet, so we'll put it up here. So if we look at the starting depth, which is 0.2 meters, you can see that the force of the drag decreases from 100 newtons at 20 centimeters under the water to 42 newtons, which is more than half of a decrease in force at 2.8 meters. So overall, as the depth increases, the drag on the subject will decrease. From looking at this study, you might think, well, actually, no one actually, streamlines at 2.8 meters under the water. And honestly, that's what I thought as well. Some pools don't even go down that deep. And so I've looked into more studies that can back up this claim that streamlining deeper in the water will reduce the drag, but not necessarily like 2.8 meters deep. I found in the same study from Ross Venel and colleagues that they produced a graph which uses a range of 0 meter to 1 meter deep toes of the same mannequin. And if we look into it, we can see that it is around 0.5 meters of depth, so around 50 centimeters. So what's that? That's around this much depth, where the drag curves start to come closer together, meaning that at around 0.5 meters under the water to around 1 meters, the kind of effect of streamlining deeper than that isn't really as beneficial to you as if you just went straight to 0.5 or under. Another study by ML Novaeus and colleagues using a computer simulation in 2012 found that streamlining at depths of more than 0.75 meters won't be of extra benefit to the swimmer. So overall, how do we kind of quantify this in terms of our body size? If you're around my size, which is like 180 centimeters, like 6 foot, you could think of, for example, your elbow to your finger under the water. That would be around 50 to 70 centimeters. If you're smaller, a bit younger, you could kind of think of your shoulder to your wrist. That would be around 70 centimeters. So that's kind of the depth at which you want to be streamlining under the water. You can kind of practice it for yourself after you finish your session for the day. Kind of go on the water and figure out where the distance is in terms of 50 centimeters to around 1 meter of distance under the water. A good streamline is only a supplement to increasing your improvements in racing. So if you think about earlier when we're talking about how much of your turns is actually part of the race, we found that in a long course 100-meter race, it's around 20%, and in a short course race, it's around 35%. And so let's flip that around. So around 80 to 65% will be in your swim part. And so you've got to make sure to optimize that as well, not just turns. Understand that learning about this research and implementing it will help you get that 5% better at swimming. But the rest of that 95% is up to your consistent and strong efforts that you put in training and the things that you do outside of training to take care of your body.
So we're at the end of the video, and here are the actionable steps that you can take. Step 1 is to get into the wall with speed. So if you glide into the wall, the wave drag, as we've explained before, is definitely going to slow you down fast. Again, this part's all practice, so make sure you keep practicing getting into the wall with speed. Number 2, get under your stern wave when you turn. And you can do that by angling your streamline slightly downwards by getting your feet up higher on the wall. And just be aware that you're going to bring in a wave to the wall. It will slow you down if you don't get under it. Remember, at 0.7 meters of water depth is where your streamline will be most effective. And that gets us to part 3, which is streamline at a further down depth in the water. And so we found that through research, around 0.5 meters, so 50 centimeters to around 75 centimeters under the water is where you'll get the most advantage in turns. If you can go deeper, you'll experience less drag, but it won't be as much of a decrease in drag compared to 0 meters on the surface to 50 centimeters under.